Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you ever dreamt of writing music for film and TV, you know that composing for the screen can be an incredibly rewarding but also challenging experience. But if you're just starting out, there are a few mistakes that I see beginner film composers make all the time. So in this video, we're going to break down 5 mistakes beginner film composers often make, and most importantly, I'll show you how to avoid them. So if you're ready to start writing cinematic scores, keep watching. Mistake number one is not understanding the role of music in film. When you're starting out, it's really easy to get caught up with excitement. I truly understand that. But the job of the composer is not just to make music sound good, it's to serve the film. And here's the thing, music isn't there to stand on its own. It's there to support the narrative, to enhance the emotional impact, to help tell a story. For example, think if your music is too loud or too intrusive, it can really take away from the visuals or from the performance of the actors. And in that way, it kind of hinders the connection we're trying to form, like as audience, with the characters. Here's a little example I've created to show you what I mean. The difference between music that gets in the way is too big and distracting, and one that instead brings us emotionally closer to the character and makes us care for them.
You know, as we come to the end of this phase of our life, we find ourselves trying to remember the good times and trying to forget the bad times. And we find ourselves thinking about the future. We start to worry, thinking, what am I going to do? Where am I going to be in 10 years? But I say to you, hey, look at me.
So how do you avoid this mistake? Understand the emotional arc of the senior scoring and think like, what am I trying to achieve here? Am I building tension or am I trying to create a sense of calm? And one suggestion would be to try to match the energy of the scene with your music. And remember, it's always about the story and not just about the notes. Mistake number two, overcomplicating your score. When you first start composing, you might be tempted to pack into each cue lots of different themes or complex arrangements, but the truth is, less is often more in film scoring. And that's why sometimes a simple piano theme with a couple notes or a subtle string pad with some movement in it can be far more effective than a bombastic orchestral or hybrid arrangement. And think about the most iconic soundtracks in film scoring that are often based around simple melodies or minimalistic elements that evolve throughout the film. So instead of trying to show off your skills, focus on the essence of the scenes. What emotion are you trying to evoke? Can you say the same thing, but maybe with fewer instruments or in a different way? Sometimes it's about also giving space for the dialogue and the visuals to breathe. And don't let your score become so overloaded that it takes away from the film. Chances are that if you are starting out, you'll work on low budget films rather than big budget blockbusters. So also think about that. If you put in music that like Hans Zimmer, John Powell, C. Jablonski scale on a short film, it might have even a comedic effect. So remember also what kind of thing you're scoring and try to match the scale of that with your orchestration and the choice of instruments. Mistake number three is not giving collaboration enough time. Film scoring is never a solo act, it's a collaborative process. You're not working in isolation. You need to work closely with the director, with the producer, with the sound designer, with the editor to make sure that the music you're making fits with the overall vision for the project. And as a beginner film composer, you might think, okay, I received the cut, now I'm gonna lock myself in the studio, write all the music from start to end without any feedback, deliver it, job done. Well, that's a huge mistake because directors and producers have their own vision for the film, and your music should complement that vision. Here's a tip: communicate early and a lot. It can be from the script, and you can have a read and maybe think about how it's gonna be when they shoot it. And okay, this could be a good scene for music, and this could be the emotion for the scene. And then once they film it and have a first cut or a second cut, you meet with the director and have a spotting session. Perhaps the editor could come on board because they're amazing. They're the right wing of the director, know the inside out of the film, and often, very often, make suggestions on the music. So they can be really helpful for you as well. And the spotting session is essentially watching the film from start to end and taking notes and have a conversation on where the music should be and what kind of mood. Try to not focus too much on the technicalities of the music, because one thing you'll hear over and over again is that a director saying, I'm really sorry, I just don't know how to speak music, the language of music, the details, which is completely fine. And I think it's great because you can just now focus on the story, on the emotions of the characters. And one thing I think is super important to remember is about being flexible. Film composing is about being flexible and be willing to adapt. And the score you make will evolve a lot throughout the film, and one cue might have 10 revisions. So if you're being precious, if you're being defensive, say you don't understand that, I'm right, well, it might not be the job for you then, because as they say, you need to be ready to kill your darlings. And one thing I found out, and it's true for me, and I work probably on 70 films and a few 6 or 7 TV shows. Rewrites are actually your friends, and you might not think that immediately, but you make better music. That's my experience. Sometimes happen. I wrote a really good piece of music. I got no spec, and it's like, damn, really? But then I do the work, I rewrite, or maybe adjust, and like, whoa, actually they're absolutely right. It's so much better than my first version. So yeah, try not to be defensive and be flexible, and try to adapt to the feedback you receive. So mistake number 4 is to rely too heavily on samples. And don't get me wrong, samples are amazing for composer, an amazing tool that revolutionized how we work. It sounds great, to be able to listen back to our ideas pretty much in real time. For might be a real orchestra, a violin, like, oh wow, that's how it will sound. But at the same time, more often than not, we are limiting our creativity because we're going to write with the sample limitation in mind. And maybe you have an idea for a fantastic melody or something else, but then you won't even try that because you think, this doesn't sound really good if I do this switch back and forth. And then you kind of end up doing something else. And so in that way, it limits your creativity because there are limitations. Or for example, if you're writing for strings, you don't use dynamics or the mod wheel or the expressions, or being playful with articulations, you're just using sustains. Here's a short example to show you in practical terms what I meant. In the first part, we have just plainly sustains, the mod wheel wasn't touched, and it sounds okay. But in the second one, I divided that MIDI blocks into legato, sustains, consordino, tremolo, and spiccato. And you can tell how it is more interesting, how the mod wheel helps me shaping the phrases and adding some swells as real players would do. I think the difference between a realistic sounding score and an artificial one a lot of times comes down to the humanity in it. We are not robots. If you go to see a live orchestra, you'll notice that maybe sometimes someone is not 100% in tune, or maybe the attack is slightly delayed or early, and maybe the staccato strings are not like a metronome, which is completely fine. Why, if you quantize, for example, everything, is gonna suck out the life of your piece. Um, or if you don't leave, for example, breaks in the woodwinds. I'm a flautist, and sometimes I forget myself as well. You write a line and it's gone on for 3 minutes. Like, okay, when is the player going to breathe? And this little thing actually can make things more realistic. Here's a little phrase I wrote to show you the concept. It's written for an alto flute, which requires even more air than a normal flute. The first phrase, as you can tell, has no breaks whatsoever. I'm not 100% sure it would be physically possible to do it. Perhaps yes, but the player could collapse at the end. The second phrase has little breaks, and that not only help the player but also makes things more realistic and help us audience to understand the piece better, because now you can understand the structure better. Da 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 da, ba da 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 da. So you can already understand the pattern and the structure of the piece more clearly than before. Also, if you can record real instruments, if you don't have access to a live orchestra, I think most of us can't afford that, or even a chamber orchestra, I think adding a couple soloists or even one will make massive difference for your score. Trust me on that. Massive difference. Once you get the recording, like, oh, you'll really feel that. It could even be a really good exercise to compare your mock-up and the real one, and try to get close to the real one. What is it that's different? Finally, mistake number 5, ignoring the sound design and atmosphere. Film scores are way more than just melodies or harmonies. It's about, film scores are about creating an atmosphere. Um, Often they will work in tandem, the music will work in tandem with the ambient sounds and Foley. And if you're just focusing on melodic writing, you're missing a huge opportunity to enhance and amplify the mood of a scene. For example, think about a horror film. Think about how effective is a low rumble or a drone for creating tension rather than just a melody. This is a cue I wrote a few years back for an horror film, and you'll listen shortly. There's not a great deal of melodic elements in it. It's heavily focusing on sound design, atmospheres, a cacophony of sounds that create an incredible tension. To avoid this mistake, my suggestion is to collaborate very closely with sound designers. Have lots of conversations. I often think about sound designers and editors as your best friends in film. And with sound designers, you can really, really shape the sonic world of a film. They can really help you shaping your music as well. Maybe you want to have, as we said, low drone, but the sound designer will come up to you and say, actually, we're in a kitchen, and in this scene, there's the rumble of a fridge. And if you didn't talk with them, you might might basically do the same thing. And instead you say, oh, great, thank you. So maybe instead I'll add an eerie, high-pitched pad rather than going in the same sonic frequencies. These kind of things that can really only happen if you have a close relationship with the sound designer, you trust each other, and it's like combining two forces going in the same direction. So there you have it. These are 5 most common mistakes beginner film composers make. And by now, hopefully, you have also a better idea on how to avoid them. So to recap, they are not understanding the role of music in film, overcomplicating your score, not giving enough time for collaboration, relying too heavily on samples, and ignoring sound design and atmospheres. So think about film scoring as a journey. It takes time for you to find your voice as a composer, but by focusing on storytelling, collaboration, attention to detail, you'll definitely become a better film composer and be able to write more effective film music. If you find this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and please also comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if you have any questions. I've been teaching film music for a number of years now, so as you can tell, I'm very passionate about the subject, and I'm very happy to help. Thank you so much for watching the video today, and I'll see you in the next one.